Welcome back to another Stay Connected podcast. I'm here today with Matt Stubbs. He's an Australian professional long drive golfer who absolutely smothers the golf ball. We got a lot to learn today with Matt. Matt, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. It's good to see you again, brother.
Yeah, great to see you. We had the first time we met was at our first quality play event at Trump National Doral. We had Matt and his buddy Seb Twaddle just ripping drives and impressing everyone around. It truly is an art what you do, and we're gonna dive into it. Starting with, how did you get started in long drive, and like what drew you to that specific discipline in golf?
Well, long drive was something that I'd always watched growing up. I've always been an avid golf fan, and for me, long drive is just another part of golf. So I always watched long drive, but then I was kind of pushed into it by chance. My mates and my coach at the time were like, "You should have a crack at long drive." I was on course at the time. I was swinging like 126, 127, which, I mean, by long drive standards, it isn't good, but for golfers, that's pretty far. And I've always had a athletic background playing sport at the high level. So I thought if I had a crack, I'd be good at it. So my mates pushed me into my first long drive event, which was in my hometown in Australia. So I competed there as an amateur and won the amateur division by 40 metres. So after that event,
Wow.
the organiser of Long Drive Australia at the time was like, "Do you want to represent Australia at the World Champs as an amateur?" And I was like, "When is it?" And he's like, 10 weeks. I'm like, "All right, let's do it." So from the next day onwards, it was 40 hours a week training and full-time commitment to long drive.
And we're going to get into the specifics of your training and preparation because it truly is a grind what you guys do and what you guys are able to do with the golf ball. But can you share a little bit about your journey from traditional golf to long drive? Like you were an amateur golfer, like a regular player, and then you transition over. Talk to me a little bit about that transition.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, my golf journey started when I was 5 years old. Where I grew up, we lived in an estate on acreage, and it was a close enough walk for me to walk to a little 9-hole golf course. So my parents let me walk there and walk back. So that's how I got into golf, and then progressed through golf from 5 all the way up until I was 18, and I was aiming to go through the US college system, go Div 1 on golf scholarship, and then go from there. But I went to a really academically focused school. So in grade 12, my education took the priority, and the golf game wasn't quite where it needed to be to pursue that route. And then in Australia at the time, there wasn't much after junior golf, bridging the gap between junior golf and professional. It was really, you finish your junior career and you go all out to turn pro. And at the time, I'd fallen out of love with the game and didn't pursue that. So I took 5 years out of golf and then only got back into it because I got into the corporate world, and golf's great for business. It's great for networking. And when you're good at golf, it helps attract more clients with the impressive skill set. So over the next couple of years, I got the golf game back down to scratch and +1. And yeah, golf was trending on a good trajectory again. I was loving it. So just before I started long drive, I actually started making a decision if I wanted to go again at the high level amateur route and then compete through there and then have a crack of going pro, because I'd started my own businesses. So I had the time during the day that I could start putting towards the practice for golf. But long drive came up by chance, like I said, and yeah, I went chips in on long drive instead.
Was there a specific moment when you realized that you like had the potential to compete on the professional level in long drive?
Yeah, there's been a few key moments where I felt like I had that revelation. The first one was when I very first started long drive, and I went to my first lesson with my coach Craig Parker, and I was max club head at like 128, and one of the other Australian long drive pros that were there at the time. He knew I had ambitions to do well at the world amateur world champs and then turn pro, and he said, "Don't be disappointed or disgruntled if it takes you a while to get to 140 miles per hour club head speed. Could take you over 12 months." And that was kind of backed up by a couple of other Australian pros at the time. And then 2 weeks later, I swung 140 miles per hour. So I was like, yeah, I think I can do this. I'm on the right trend. And then it was the same kind of messages when it came to 150 miles per hour, and I achieved that in my first 3 months of training. So I was like, yeah, I've definitely got the speed to be able to compete with the big boys. But then the first moment where I felt like I truly belonged competing against the best long drive pros in the world was the World Long Drive Memphis in 2023, where I made my first top 16, and that's where finals and match play start. And that's where things start getting serious, and you get recognized as being a top hitter once you make those match play matches, because it takes a lot of good balls to get through to that far in an event. And I was like, yeah, this is where I belong. This is what I should be doing.
Yeah. And is there like a specific club head speed number that people like if anybody would want to get into long drive? What's like that baseline number? You mentioned 140. Is like if you
Mhm.
can get there, like do you think now you have like some sort of chance to be in the door?
So there's two different aspects when it comes to club head speed. There's absolute max club head speed, which you do during speed training sessions and while you're training, and then there's how fast you are on the grid. So we say if you're at about 140 miles per hour club head speed, you can start competing in the amateur division. And then when you're 150 miles per hour in the pros, that's when you start being competitive and you can start getting some results and stuff like that. Because I mean, there are guys that swing slower in the pro division, and if luck goes their way, they can keep progressing. But like, if you want to have a proper crack and achieve some good results, you want to be above 150 miles per hour on the grid.
Yeah, that's it's quite a task. I mean, I'm sure it took you a while to get there, and I want to dive deep into that process. Like, what does your daily training regimen look like, both like golf skill specific and also fitness?
Yeah, so there's two parts. There's the off season training where you're not competing. I have that coming up. I'll head back to Australia October 1 for a 5 month off season training, and that's when training is absolutely full on, full time dedication to it. And that's where we're putting those 40 hours a week into the training, and you're in the gym 5-6 times a week. We're hitting with our long drive coach, Craig Parker, 3-4 times a week. On top of that, we're doing various high performance session with another coach. There's sprint training sessions on top of that, and then cardio as well. And we do all that training for a few reasons. I mean, the most common misconception that we see, especially on social media as long drive pros, is we're going to blow our back out. You're not going to be able to walk by the time you're 30. But we spend so much time in the gym and so much time conditioning our body so we can withstand these forces, because if we didn't, yeah, that's when you'd start having issues. And then the other reason why we do that much training is long drive really is a full body explosive movement. We're just trying to become the greatest athletes that we can. We want to be as explosive as possible so we can swing as fast as we can and handle the forces that come with it.
Yeah, and we'll get into the technique side of things because I really want to understand like what that swing looks like on broken down. But
Yeah.
how do you balance like your strength training with the flexibility and the technique to optimize your distance?
Yeah, well, flexibility is something we don't really focus on. Mobility, we believe that mobility comes from correctly strengthening your body. If you have tightness in a muscle, or if you're not flexible with a muscle, it's commonly from an imbalance in another part of your body. I mean, before long drive, I always competed a sport at a high level, but it wasn't until I got involved with my trainer for long drive, Hayden Edgerton, that I started understanding how many small muscles and how many different muscle groups and stuff were in play while doing any sport, let alone golf. And it wasn't until he properly strengthened me and conditioned my body and reduced all my imbalances that my mobility and flexibility starting increasing in turn. But it's also important the kind of exercises you do, because you don't want to just become like jacked up and stocky and lose that
Yeah.
mobility just from having muscles that are too big, especially like around the chest and lats and stuff like that.
What are some of the muscles that you focus on in your training?
Predominantly legs. There is
Yeah.
so much club head speed that can come from the bottom half. The sport I was competing in before long drive at a high level was jiu-jitsu, and we tried to keep lean legs so you can
Oh
attack with
wow.
them. So the amount of muscle mass I put on my legs was, I mean, even surprising for myself. But then also a lot of back, and then when you're training a lot of back, you just pick up a lot of muscle in the arms as well. We focused very little on the chest. Yeah, there's
Hmm.
not much to. We believe there's not much to gain athletically for long drive by training a lot of chest.
Interesting. And what were some of the correlations that you can build from jujitsu and long drive in terms of the mentality that it goes into executing the shot?
Well, jiu-jitsu is arguably one of the greatest sports for discipline and mental toughness and fortitude. Um, those top jiu-jitsu guys in the world are incredibly tough, incredibly resilient, absolutely dedicated when it comes to all their training um, and pushing through when it hurts. Uh, so I think that aspect of jiu-jitsu definitely helped me when it came to long drive and getting the most out of myself, but also when it comes to competing.
Yeah. And do you follow a specific diet or like recovery routine that helps you maintain that peak performance?
Yeah. So on top of our training, I'm sponsored by a recovery center on the Gold Coast, Riggs Recovery. And me and Seb would be in there for an hour to 2 hours every day, um, especially after training. But then also priming the body for a big all-out speed session. We'll be in there before the session, before we drive up to Brisbane to see our coach. So, I mean, recovery, putting the time into recovery is fundamental, and then also maximizing your sleep. Um, 8 hours sleep as a minimum is so underrated when it comes to recovery. But then also maximizing the calories that you can eat in a day um, without putting on fat. Um, we like to keep a really lean body. Well, personally, Seb and I like to keep a really lean body for long drive. We don't want to be throwing around any unnecessary weight with unnecessary fat, but also more calories we can eat, we can improve our recovery.
Yeah. So are you guys grubbing like all day?
Yeah, when we're in Australia, yeah, the first preseason the Seb and I did before we competed on the World Long Drive Tour in 2023, we're actually living together. He was at the time a 21-year-old living in Sydney by himself with absolutely all the talent in the world. But he had an online coach and he was training for aesthetics and to look good. So I was like, how about you come up to the Gold Coast for a week and live with me, um, train with Craig Parker and my trainer. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. And then 3 days in, he's like, can I move full time and live with you and have a crack at this? So from the next 7 months onwards, we were living, training, eating, doing absolutely everything together. And yeah, it was unbelievable for both of us. In that time, he became the fastest man in the world, and I pushed my PBs incredibly high as well. So it was great, and that's what I'm looking forward to again this off season coming up.
Yeah, and you kind of answered my next question there. Just to give the audience some context, Seb is another professional long drive golfer from Australia who's absolute beast. He's six
Yeah.
six and just
Hmm.
packed with muscle. As
Yeah.
you said, he got to the fastest speed in the world.
Hmm.
How instrumental has it been for your success to have Seb to be training with?
Yeah, it was an incredible asset. I mean, in all parts of my life, I've always aimed to associate myself with the best because when you hang around the best, that's what you become. Um, so with Seb in long drive training, it was a constant battle between us. I mean, we both wanted each other to achieve our goals and be the best, but we also wanted to be the best ourselves. So it was a constant battle of me trying to catch Seb and Seb trying to make sure I didn't catch him. So it was
Yeah.
it was extremely beneficial for both of us, and having a training partner in something like long drive or anything is just someone that you work well with that can just help push you and get the absolute best out of you.
Yeah. And to me, what I've heard has been, in order to get power in your golf swing, you need strength and speed combined. If you
Yep.
just have strength and have no speed, you're not going to have that much power. If you just have speed and no strength, you're not going to withstand your power. So, how do you balance the training side of the strength with the speed? Is it 50-50, or how do you do it?
Um, no, we spend, especially during the off season, we spend a lot more time in the gym and conditioning our body.
Strength training wise.
Yes, strength
Yeah.
training and just become as explosive as we can there. And then we have our long drive training sessions with our coach where he's constantly refining technique and getting the most out of the body that we can. Yeah, but it's a constant push to be as athletic as we can. Like some of the most explosive athletes in the world are Olympic lifters and Olympic 100-meter sprinters. So we model a
Yeah.
lot of our training around those two, and you can constantly keep improving your body in that regard. And there's a lot of speed to gain from that.
Yeah, 100%. So, can you break down your swing mechanics and how they differ from like a traditional golf swing?
Yeah. So long drive just takes a standard golf swing to the absolute extreme. Um, you look at guys like Kyle Berkshire and Seb Twiddell and Owen Meads, and they've got great golf swings. And then when they take it to long drive's just an extension of their golf swing. So everything becomes exaggerated. Like they start getting further off the ball, and then they get back harder onto the lead side. Their hands are even further around their back, and then the hips as they come around are faster with maximum intention. Um, yeah, so technique is fundamental as well, and um, you can take a good golf swing with the right mechanics that are already implemented and just push and exaggerate everything to get every last mile per hour out.
And what are some of the things that you are like specifically exaggerating? Are you trying to get your swing to feel longer? Are you trying to get your feet to really like, hit the ground? Like what are some of those things that you're really exaggerating in the swing?
Yeah, so it's absolutely everything. But for me personally, at the start of the swing, I'm trying to get 100% of my body weight onto my trail side, and then as I getting maximum torque out of my hip, I'm trying to feel like a torque around my femur and a force up into the hip socket, because then I know that's my hips at maximum rotation, and then trying to rotate the chest as deep as you can, get the hands as far around behind you, and then when you achieve that, slamming back into the lead side to then explode out and start throwing the hands and getting the most out of the shaft.
Yeah. And you mentioned the shaft there. That leads me to my next question. What role has the equipment played in long drive for you? Like, how do you customize your clubs for maximum distance?
Yes, that's another misconception about long drive is the shafts we use. Commonly, people think we use like triple X or 4X stiff shafts to achieve what we do, but it's actually quite the opposite now. Someone like Kyle Berkshire was really fundamental in the development of the sport there when he came into the sport. Before that, everyone was using really, really stiff shafts, and when he brought his like superior technique into the sport and started experimenting with these really soft shafts, that's when club head speeds started increasing a lot. So we have long drive specific built shafts, but the ones that we use are the equivalent of like a senior or a ladies flex, and we really use them like a whip. Uh, like whether you got a wet towel and you're trying to whip someone, or if you've got a cowboy whip, when you throw your hand at the target and then decelerate it, you can see how the towel or the rope just whips through, and it's the exact same thing we do with a long drive shaft.
Yeah, it's a noodle, like literally.
Yeah,
And you guys use pretty low lofted club heads, right?
we do. So uh, most athletes on the grid will use the Callaway paradigm, and that comes manufactured between 4.2 and 4.5 degrees. And then most of us will turn it down another 2 degrees as well. So it typically has the same amount of loft as your standard putter, and that's to primarily keep the spin down. We achieve all our launch angle with our attack angle, and we use our body to get the ball in the air rather than the club face like a normal golfer.
Yeah. Nice, man. That's cool. And I want to transition over now more into the competition side. Can you
Mhm.
explain to the people how long drive competitions work?
I'll do my best. So
Yeah.
the typical World Long Drive event will be the top 64 athletes in the world invited. That 64-man field in the first round gets split into four 16-man groups. In a 16-man group, you'll have 5 sets individually, and within those 5 sets, you'll have a round robin uh, against 3 other guys. So on the grid at the time will be 4 athletes, and during that 16-man round robin, you'll face everyone exactly once. So in each of those 5 sets, you'll be scored on your best ball in the grid. Longest ball in the grid counts. And first place out of the group of 4 will get 200 points, and then 100, 50, 25, or if you go OB, that's 0. So you get your points from each of your 5 sets, and that goes onto the leaderboard, and then the top 8 out of the 16 progress to the next round. The exact same thing happens. Said it's 32 man, so it's two 16-man groups. Same thing happens, and then top 16 goes into head-to-head match play. You get 6 balls, your opponent gets 6 balls. Best ball progresses until we have the winner.
Nice. And what are some of the mental strategies that you use to stay like focused and calm under the pressure of competition while you're still like your adrenaline is spiked through the roof hitting bombs?
It is. It's an incredible atmosphere being out there in the grid. The adrenaline you face, especially, completely changes everything, as well as any nerves or anything guys are bringing into the grid. I mean, at all times you're hitting against other people, and there's guys hitting great balls and yelling and cheering and celebrating. There's other guys having tantrums and hissy fits. So, I mean, you can ultimately only control what you're doing. So you just have to focus on each ball at the time in each set. You have to be completely aware of what's going on with the conditions at all times. The wind changing can affect the type of shot you hit. And then from there, you just have to stay disciplined with your process and pre-shot routine, keeping everything consistent, everything the same, and just hitting the best ball you can each time.
Yeah, and just to give the audience some context on this, like when he mentions the grid, it's basically like a spot where these guys are hitting, and there's a grandstand behind them where there's people sitting and cheering, and I'm pretty sure there's an announcer that announces your name and kind of
Yep,
it,
yep.
it directs the
And
experience.
yeah,
Uh,
and then there's always music pumping. And just for everyone listening, the grid that we compete on is generally 60 yards wide, and then runs out about 450 or 500 yards based on the location. So it's
when
not
you
that much wider than your normal golf fairway.
Yeah, exactly. And when you hit, you know, this far, it's obviously harder to get it, that narrowed in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when the weather conditions come in, let's say
Mm-hmm.
wind predominantly, how does your strategy actually change into the wind versus downwind?
Yeah, so downwind, or into and downwind are obviously the two biggest factors that can change it. When it's downwind, you just want to hit the absolute maximum attack angle that you can physically achieve while ensuring your spin doesn't start lofting just spinning the ball out of control too much. And then obviously when it's into the wind, I change shaft to a shaft that has a bit less spin, and that I launch it a little bit lower to penetrate more.
And you can switch shafts in these events, no problem, like mid shot.
Yeah, yeah. Most guys will take most guys will take 3 shafts onto the grid. Generally, the shaft that you use most of the time, and then a backup for that in case it breaks, and then a different shaft if it looks like conditions could change during a set.
So when you guys are doing that 16-man round robin, is there ever
Mhm.
like a scenario where a guy is hitting downwind and then, another guy hits into the wind and the guy that hits into the wind kind of gets screwed? Or do they all hit at the same time?
Yeah, so all 4 guys on the grid, you have 2.5 minutes to hit 6 balls. You all start at the same time and finish at the same time. So, um, yeah, generally you won't see an occasion where
Okay.
the wind will swap just for one guy.
And is 2.5 minutes for 6 balls like, enough time, or you kind of just like you gotta like keep it going?
So you get accustomed to it. So at the start of the set, I mean we've worked it out when your names are getting called to start the set, the athletes will generally start walking in. So you're able to hit your ball at 2 minutes and 29 seconds. And then from there, I mean, each person has a different process. I'll generally look at the starting line, and I know based on how I've hit it, where it should finish. And then it'll be immediately teeing up another ball. And then it's walk away, reset, choose target again, walk in, pre-shot routine. Yeah, so every
Yeah.
guy has it worked out how to use the 2.5 minutes as they can. We actually usually have a little bit of time. Personally, I have a little bit of time left over in case for anything.
Yeah. You really got to stay connected to your process, throughout these
Absolutely.
competitions. What's the
Mhm.
biggest challenge for you, Matt? When you face, these guys during the long drive competitions.
Um, I mean, personally, there's no challenges that come from competing against anyone. I know when I at the start of 2023 when I first turned pro and I was competing against guys like Kyle and Martin and Justin James who I'd watched on TV and cheered on and supported, and then next minute you're on the grid next to them. I mean, when you're up there competing, you have to beat them, so you have to. Doesn't matter who they are, who you're up against. You just have to hit the best ball you can. I mean, there can be certain times during an event where in a set you need to get at least second, or you have to win that set to progress, and you know who you're going up against. So that some guys are faster than others, some are more or less accurate than others. So
Yeah.
I mean, at times you can change slightly what you need to do based on who you're going up against, but generally you're just trying to hit your best ball every single time.
Yeah. And what's been your most memorable moment so far in long drive during these competitions?
Um, I think my first top 16 was was a great feeling. That's when I felt like the first time that I'd actually accomplished something, and I was competing against guys that I looked up to and guys that are recognised in the sport. Um, this year I had a top 3 finish in Mexico under the ULD system. Um, that was a good achievement as well. And then my last event I competed at, the Birdie Juice Invitational, was I beat only finished tied ninth. I got 6 balled in my in my round there to prevent progressing. But as an athlete, I felt like that was the best I'd ever hit at an event. Um, so seeing the progress there and being excited for the future after that result was also a fundamental time for me.
Yeah. And did you have any like growing up, any idols in terms of like long drive that you looked up to? That you were like, damn, I really want to be like this guy one day.
Um, I didn't have long drive idols. I mean, the only idol that I've ever had in sport is Tiger Woods. Still is. Um, he was an incredible athlete at the forefront of golf, and he was someone I always looked up to. Um, and I mean, you can take many things away from Tiger and apply it into every aspect of your life. So what he did and how he achieved it can always cross over to long drive.
Yeah. And what are some of your goals moving forward in terms of long drive and potentially traditional golf? But like it seems like you're pretty on point with what you want to do with long drive. Where do you want to take it, man?
So long drive, I do want to achieve world number one status and be world champion. The biggest goal in life that I currently have is to be a world champion in three different sports. Um, I achieved my first world championship in water jetpacking in 2018. Um,
Wow.
Long drive's the next sport that I do want to become world champion in, and I won't stop until I achieve that. And then after that, I become world champion in jiu-jitsu. I can save that one for later because there's a number of belts and a number of weight divisions and age categories that can be done in.
That's fascinating, man.
Mm.
Water, so that you said jet packing in water? I've seen some Instagram
Yeah,
videos with you doing that. You look pretty professional doing it. What's that sport? Just to get off topic a little bit, I'm curious.
yeah. So I mean, most people would have seen it at least once. It's where the jetpack is strapped onto my back, and a hose from the jetpack goes down to a jet ski. And yeah, we're flying up to 60 feet in the air, doing backflips and spins and all number of tricks. So yeah, that's what I was competing in, and I mean, when it fits my schedule, I still travel around Australia and the world putting on jetpack shows. Can do a jetpack show basically anywhere now in open water, in a hotel pool. And when those aren't available, we travel around with a 30 feet blow up pool. We put about half a foot of water in. I can do a show there as well.
That's so cool, man. It seems like you're very interested in like the extreme sports, which is fascinating. And it
Yeah.
definitely has something to do with your mindset. What do you think it
Mhm.
is about like the way you think about life that gravitates you towards these extreme sports?
Um, I I was diagnosed with ADHD, and one of the things that can regulate dopamine for someone with ADHD is adrenaline. So I absolutely love adrenaline. After I get my adrenaline hit, it calms me and balances me. But outside of that, I'm very fortunate that my dad is one of the greatest sports psychologists in the world. He calls himself an
Wow.
expect to win coach, but people can kind of understand a little bit more what he's about by saying sports psychologist. And in terms of the results that he's achieved with athletes and sport teams in the world, he's one of the best out there. And so I was brought up in that, and subconsciously picking up all the messaging that he was telling his clients and athletes and coaches and stuff like that. And I mean, he lives by the mantra expect to win. So that's going out there with the full intention and the belief in yourself that you're going to win. And that applies not just in sport, but life, business, personal life as well. And I mean, that's partially where these really lofty goals and ambitions come from.
I love that, man.
I'm
And I think
not
it's
content
fascinating. I
being
think
small.
everyone should look into, I mean, should definitely establish this type of mindset in their life, regardless of where they're at. You know, expect to win. That builds you, builds your confidence up and, really has you going for something, knowing, to win, you got to be prepared, first of all.
Mm,
So you can't
exactly.
expect to win if you didn't put any work to be able to
Mhm,
get there. That's the first step. And then when you've actually prepared and it's the time to actually execute the shot and go out there and do it, actually, telling yourself that you're prepared, you're here for a reason and you're capable of being the best. And it's that
exactly.
mental training that you've been developing that's really going to set you apart and give you a chance to truly be the best, long driver you can be. And
Yeah.
what advice would you give someone that's trying to gain distance with their drive?
Yeah. So that's the most common question that amateur golfers and people wanting to get into long drive. I mean, across the entire golf world wants to know. And I mean, I start off with by telling, especially like young guys or men in in the golf world. If you can increase your squat, your bench, and your dead, you're going to increase club head speed from there. It's important for everyone to work with a coach to improve your technique instead of trying to guess and work it out yourself. And then for the higher handicap golfers, it's important to not just go to a golf shop and pick up any driver off the rack. If you want to improve, you should be getting that club fit to you. But until you're a low enough marker, you should be spending that money on lessons instead of trying to find a driver that can slightly improve your dispersion. So seeing
Spot on.
definitely any kind of training in the gym is going to help, and then seeing a trained professional to improve your swing are definitely fundamental.
Do you think every golfer should train their speed?
Absolutely. There is no doubt in my mind that every single golfer, from whatever handicap through to best professionals in the world, should be doing speed training. The statistical advantages that have been proven across all levels of golf, from increasing your club head speed, are insane. I saw it firsthand myself. So when I very first started long drive, I was a +1 marker at my local course, but my local course is long. It's had PGA events held there. It's a tough track. And in the first 6 months of training long drive, where my long drive club head speed went from 126 to 155, in that time, I'd increased my distance on course, and I went from swinging like 126 to 136 on course, and my handicap went from +1 to +5. Um, I
Wow.
wasn't practicing any golf at the time, so nothing on the range, nothing in the short game area. I was just playing 4 times a week because I enjoyed it, and it separated me from my long drive training. So I feel like it was a perfect case study example for myself to see the statistical benefits of increasing your distance off the tee.
That's great, man. That's a very good piece of advice right there for everyone listening. So thank you, Matt, for everything you've shared. Before we end this, though, I want to know one thing. What's the longest drive you've ever hit in competition or practice, yardage wise?
Yeah, so my longest driving competition was 450 yards.
Yeah, bro. What's the
Yeah,
club speed on that? Club and ball.
that would have been over 220 ball speed. Yeah, didn't know at the time because there was no radars or stuff behind, but you know what it feels like.
And the club speed on that?
Would have been over 150,
That's
somewhere between
insane, man.
150 and 155.
It's so fascinating, and you guys are truly inspiring the world of golf. Because I mean, and the world of being an athlete, because you're pushing your limits to do something pretty impressive, and showing what the human body is capable of doing. So, I love watching it. I know the people love watching it, and I hope the game and the sport of long drive continues to evolve and continues to help everyone that's involved in it. But thank you so much, Matt, for everything you've shared today, all the pieces and nuggets that the audience is going to take on training their speed and understanding what the path really looks like.
Awesome. No worries. Thank you for having me, brother. Appreciate it.
All right. See you guys in the next episode. Appreciate you watching. Peace.